All right, so hey guys, I'm making this video for anyone who needs the initial steps to filing a civil complaint. I'm not going to go too much into details with motions and, discovery and how to request the defendant to produce documents or interrogatories, just the initial steps to filing your lawsuit. I also want to make mention that this is not legal or financial advice, so please just take what I'm giving you and do your own due diligence and your own research, okay? So the first thing I want you guys to look up is the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, which is the document that's on right now. This document is going to tell you all of the steps that you need to do in order to file your complaint. Now, each jurisdiction has something called the civil local rules. You'll also want to look that up and refer back to that as well. All right. So, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. And it tells you these rules, right? So the rules of civil procedure govern the procedure in all civil actions and proceedings in the United States District Court. It tells you here there is one form of action, which is the civil action, and a civil action is commenced by filing a complaint with the court. So that's all you have to do to file your lawsuit is you file your complaint with the court. Okay? So let's go to this website, which is uscourts.gov. Now, if you guys get an opportunity, I would suggest, to go through because there's a lot of, good resources on this website. For the sake of this video, we're going here, Service and Forms, and we're going to click on Forms. I also want you guys to be mindful that when you file your complaint, there is a filing fee. I am in Georgia. Currently, my filing fee is $402. All right. If you're not able to afford the filing fee, there is something called an application to proceed in district court without prepaying fees or costs. And this is the long form. They also have a short form. Um, I've always been told, to fill out the long form. So that's what I always will suggest to other people. But again, long or short form, you do what works best for you. And you are going to fill this information out. The civil action that'll be given to you at a later date. Once you have sent in your complaint to the court, the clerk will assign you a case number. So you'll leave that blank, but everything else you're going to want to complete. And it's what, 5 pages? So it's a lot of personal information that they're going to be asking you for. Now, you will send in this application along with your civil cover sheet and your complaint, which we will go over. And then also, if your application is approved, you will not have to, send a summons or send a marshal or sheriff or a process server to, serve the defendant. The court will do it on your behalf if your application is approved. If your application is not approved, you will have to pay the filing fee, or nothing will go any further. Okay, so we're in forms. As you can see, there's many different forms for whatever situation you're in. We're going to say civil forms for the sake of this video. And of course, you can see there are a ton of, different forms here. Okay, we're going to just scroll down here to this JS44. And JS44 is the civil cover sheet. As you can see, there's a lot of pro se documents. So these are all the documents for people who are representing themselves. So if you don't know how to do a certain document, like all of these say complaints, if you don't know how to do something, you can download these forms and they're templates that you're able to use. So they provide you these templates because obviously, we probably don't have the legal knowledge, that, people that do this on an everyday have, obviously. So they give you the templates. So the first thing is the civil cover sheet, right? So if we click on civil cover sheet, it takes us to this document or this, I'm sorry, this page. You can download the nature of suit code descriptions, and then you click download form, which is your civil cover sheet. and it's going to take you to this form here. So be mindful that the instructions are on page 2. So if you get stuck and don't know how to answer something, just scroll down to the instructions. So plaintiff, of course, is you. If you are doing this on your own without an attorney, you're going to have your name and then pro se, and then you're going to put your county of residence. And again, no attorney, you would leave this blank. Defendants, whether it's one defendant or multiple, you would list all the defendants here, but you're only going to list the county of the residence for whoever you listed as the first defendant. If you know the attorney, you could put it here. More than likely, you will not know the attorney, so you could leave it blank. Basis for jurisdiction, you're going to check one box, right? So if the plaintiff is the U.S. government or a government entity or a official officer, something like that. If they're the defendant, you would check that box. A federal question is something that has to do with a federal law, an act of Congress, Constitution, but this is when the U.S. government is not a defendant. So if you are not suing the government or a government entity or a government official, then you would check box number 3 if it had to do with a federal law. Diversity is when you have two parties that are in different states. Okay. Now, if it's a party that's in two different states, but it's a federal question, then the federal question jurisdiction would take precedence. Okay. And again, if you're not sure, then you just go down to the instructions. And here it says federal question, and it tells you where jurisdiction arises under the Constitution of the United States, an amendment to the Constitution, an act of Congress, or a treaty. Okay? Then you would check box number 3. If it's a case where the U.S. is a party, whether a plaintiff or defendant, then you would check, that would take precedence, and you would check box 1 or box 2. Now, diversity of citizenship, this is telling you where parties are citizens of different states, but it says federal question actions take precedence over diversity cases. Okay? So we'll just say federal question. Now, citizenship of principal parties, again, this says for diversity cases only. So unless you check box 4, you do not need to fill out this section. Nature of your suit. If you're unsure of what box to check, sometimes people get confused because they'll say like, oh, consumer credit, or here it says truth in lending. And so they're not sure which one they're supposed to check, right? So you can here go to the nature of suit code descriptions, which is this here. And, it's 9 pages. So it gives you a description of every option here is on this description page. So let's scroll down. So consumer credit, right? It's talking about action filed under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? So 1681 N or O, and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is 1692 K. All right. Now, if it's truth in lending, that was under personal property. So this is action alleging violation of the Federal Truth in Lending Act arising from consumer loan transactions involving personal property, including automobile loans and revolving credit accounts. Okay? So if you're trying to figure out, well, I don't know which one to use, then you're going to want to look at these descriptions, right? Does it have to do with automobile loans or revolving credit accounts, or does it have to do with those sections, right? These sections here of the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So that's how you're going to determine which code to use, okay? So we'll just say for the sake of this that we're choosing consumer credit. Origin, since this is an original proceeding, we're going to check that box because this is our initial complaint. Cause of action. What is the civil statute under which you are filing? And then you're going to write your brief description of your cause. Check here if this is a class action. It is not a class action, so do not check the box. And then what is your monetary relief that you're asking the court to order? Whatever amount of money you will put here. Check yes only if demanded in complaint that you want a jury trial. So if you check no here, then you cannot demand it in your complaint. If you check yes here, then you have to demand it in your complaint. And so some people may say, well, do I select a jury trial or do I not? And really, it's going to be dependent upon you and depending upon your case. So you just have to think about, who they're going to have in the jury, right? It's just our peers, okay? And you're going to have to think how knowledgeable are everyday people who, maybe just go to work and come home every day and maybe, you're passionate about something, so you research something a lot and you might be a little more knowledgeable than other people, right? So you might think, well, I'm knowledgeable about it, maybe other people are, but think of it as a collective, right? So think of it as a collective. Who's going to have more knowledge? Just general everyday people who don't really research, maybe what your case is about, or a judge who, knows the laws obviously better than, probably some of the jury members. So, just case by case basis, see what option would work best for your situation. And then, of course, if you have any related cases, you will list that there and you will date it and sign it. And this is your civil cover sheet. All right, so you're going to have this civil cover sheet and then you're going to have your complaint. So you're going to fill this top section out, your name, the defendants, the case number will remain blank. Again, once you send this to the court, the clerk will assign you a case number. And here is where it says jury trial. So if you checked yes here, you're going to check yes on your civil cover sheet. If you check no here, you're going to check no on your civil cover sheet. So whichever you choose. All right, your information. Now, please make sure that anytime you change your address or any of your information that you're letting the court know, as well as the defendant, because there's going to be a lot of documents in the mail that's being sent, and you want to make sure that you're getting the documents on time so that you can respond on time. So you don't want something delayed because they don't have your correct address. So make sure that even if you move or whatever, that you are updating your address with both the defendant and the court. All right, so your information here, defendant or defendants information here. The basis for your jurisdiction, again, we're going to say federal question. And again, it tells you here, if you have a question on which one you're supposed to select, it gives you the descriptions here, right? And then because we chose federal question, we're going to list our specific federal statutes. What laws and things are we basing this on? So you're going to list them here. If you were doing diversity, you would fill out section B 1 through 3. Okay, that's only for diversity. If you do not have a diversity case, you will leave it blank. Your statement of claim, you wanna write factual statements. Okay, not I think or I believe, factual statements. If you have more than one claim, you're going to want to have them in different paragraphs and have them numbered. So if you have 3 complaints, you're going to have, paragraph number 1, and then you're going to specify what your complaint is. Skip a line, paragraph number 2, specify what your complaint is. Skip a line. Number 3, specify what your complaint is, right? And then your relief is what are you requesting, or what do you want the court to order, right? So how much do you want to be paid? What do you want the court to order? Okay. And then you have your closing. right? So this is basically saying that you certify to the best of your knowledge, that this is being presented for, it's not being presented for an improper purpose, la. You can read that. And right here, it even tells you, I agree to provide the clerk's office with any changes to my address where case-related papers may be served. I understand my failure to keep a current address on file with the clerk's office may result in the dismissal of my case. It's very important that they have your information. All right. Put your date, your signature, and your printed name. Because you do not have an attorney, you don't have to worry about this. But if you had an attorney, they would fill it out. Okay. And then this is your complaint. So you have your civil cover sheet and you have your complaint. Now, when you send your complaint to the court, you're going to want to send them 2 copies. And the reason you want to send them 2 copies and a self-addressed stamped envelope is so that they can send you one of the copies back once it's been stamped and it has the case number on it. Okay. And then you're going to want to keep that because you're going to have to serve a summons to the defendant. Okay, so let's get into the summons. All right, so as I stated in the beginning of the video, if you do not have the fee for the filing of your complaint, you can fill out the application of the fee waiver. If your application is approved, then the court will do the summons on your behalf and will serve the defendant. Okay, and this is what a summons will look like. If you did the application and it was denied, or if you just went on ahead and paid the filing fee on your own, then this is what your summons would look like. Okay, your name, defendant's address, and then you would put in here whatever the case number is that you received when you sent in your complaint. Okay, a lawsuit has been filed against you and they have 21 days, right, where they have to serve on the plaintiff an answer to the complaint or a motion. All right. Typically, these companies are not going to file an answer. They will probably just file a motion to dismiss. And it'll be a motion to dismiss for probably like failure to state a claim or jurisdiction. It'll probably be something. Most typically, they try to just file a motion to dismiss instead of filing an answer. But I'm not saying that they won't file an answer. I'm just saying don't be surprised if they just file a motion to dismiss. Okay, so they have 21 days to respond, right? It tells you here, if you fail to respond, judgment by default will be entered against you for the relief demanded in the complaint. You must also file your answer or motion with the court. So I want you guys to be mindful because a lot of times, right? A lot of times the you get served or you serve someone, let's say, right? And they do not respond. Please do not just assume that because they did not respond in the time allowed, like the 21 days in this example, that the court is just going to automatically know that, okay, they didn't respond in 21 days, so we're going to issue a default judgment. No, you need to request that the court do that. Okay? So they're not going to just do it on your behalf. You have to do it. So make sure that when you send this out, that you have in your calendar the 21 days so that if they do not respond within that time, that you are sending out your request for a default judgment to the court. Okay. So this you want to send because as you see here, it has to be signed by the clerk of court. All right. Now you could do something called let's say that you do not want to serve the defendant, right? So depending on your jurisdiction, they might make you hire a process server. They might make you get a sheriff or the marshals, someone to serve the summons and complaint, right? So let's say that you do not want to do that. You could do what's called a waiver of service. Okay, so a waiver of service is this document here. which is notice of a lawsuit and request to waive service of a summons. This is telling you that a lawsuit has been filed. This is not a summons or an official notice from the court, but in an effort to reduce, or what does it say here? Avoid expenses, that they waive a formal service of a summons by signing and returning the enclosed waiver. All right. Now, you're going to send this document and also this document, the waiver of service of summons, two of these. One comes back to you and they keep one. So you have to send two copies of the waiver of service, one copy of the notice of lawsuit and request to waive, and then you have to include an envelope for them to return it. Okay? Now, the only thing with this is that they have 60 days to respond. Instead of the 21 days, they have 60 days to respond. So it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Just depends. All right? So if they're not very organized, and 60 days is a long way out, and they're not organized, they may forget and you have a default judgment. All right? 21 days, maybe they can't, maybe they can't get it done in 21 days because they're just so busy or something, and boom, you can get a default judgment. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. But anyways, this one gives them 60 days instead of 21 days to either file an answer or to file a motion to dismiss. It says here, right, if you do not return the signed waiver within the time indicated, I will arrange to have the summons and complaint served on you, and I will ask the court to require, not suggest, but require the defendant, right, to pay the expense of making service. Okay. And this is in a number of places. So if we go back to the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, right, it talks about a summons, and it talks about what a summons has to have, right? It has to be signed by the clerk and it has to bear the court seal. It has to have all of these. Okay. And I'm not going to go through each one, but I do want to go down here to waiving service. So requesting a waiver, right? So it tells you here, failure to waive. If a defendant located within the United States fails without good cause to sign and return a waiver requested by a plaintiff located within the United States, the court must, right, must impose on the defendant the expenses later incurred in making service and the reasonable expenses, including attorney fees, of any motion required to collect those service expenses. So if you, as the plaintiff, send them a request, right, to waive service, and they do not, then they are responsible for paying those fees. So that's one thing to remember. Okay. So again, just going over the steps, you have your civil cover sheet and your complaint. You want to send 2 copies of your complaint along with your self-addressed stamp envelope so that they could send you the complaint with the case number back to you. If you are paying for it, you have to include your filing fee. If you're not trying to pay for it, you have to send in your application to have the fee waived. If the application is approved, the court will serve the summons and the complaint on the defendant on your behalf. If not, you will have to serve the summons and complaint on the defendant by checking what your rules are in your jurisdiction, whether a process server has to do it or if a sheriff or marshal has to do it. You're responsible for figuring that out and then paying any fees associated with that. Okay. Or you could do a waiver of service in which they, instead of having 21 days to respond, they have 60 days to respond. But if they do not waive service, then the defendant is responsible for paying for it. And so whatever way, either the summons or the waiver of service of a summons, whatever way you decide, make sure that you're also sending that to the court so that they can sign it, stamp it, and you can send it out to the defendant. So those are the initial steps. I hope that you found it useful. Again, make sure that you guys are going through the federal rules of civil procedure because it will, walk you through all of the steps. If they do not respond to your complaint within the time allotted, whether it's 21 days or 60 days, depending on how you do your summons, right, or your waiver of service, make sure that if they do not respond, the defendant does not respond in the time allowed, that you are sending your documentation to the court for your default judgment. Okay, so again, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment section. I will do my best to answer them or direct you to where the answer can or the question can be answered. And I will do a video later on that will go over some additional steps.